The champagne flute felt like a prop in my hand as I watched my wife Tessa work the room like she owned it. Which, in her mind, she probably did. The Grand Meridian Hotel's ballroom sparkled with crystal chandeliers and the kind of people who measured their worth in Instagram followers and designer handbags. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. "Mark, darling, you look absolutely miserable," Tessa purred, appearing at my elbow in her $1,000 dress. Her smile was camera-ready, but her eyes held that familiar cold calculation I'd grown to despise over our 5 years of marriage. "Just enjoying the show," I replied, taking a sip of overpriced champagne. As a logistics manager for a mid-sized shipping company, I made decent money, but not enough to feel comfortable in rooms like this. Tessa's influencer aspirations had dragged us into circles where I was perpetually the cardboard husband, about as useful as the promotional keychains they handed out at corporate events. The annual Sports Excellence Awards brought out every athlete, sponsor, and social climber in the city. Tessa had finagled us invitations through her brand partnerships, which mostly consisted of posting photos with products she got for free in exchange for tagging companies that probably forgot about her 5 minutes after approving her posts. "There's Luca Drayton," Tessa breathed, her voice taking on that breathy quality that made my skin crawl. "He's even more gorgeous in person." I followed her gaze to the soccer star holding court near the stage. Luca Drayton was everything I wasn't: tall, athletic, wealthy, and surrounded by people who hung on his every word. His perfectly styled hair and designer suit probably cost more than my monthly salary. "Fascinating," I muttered, watching as photographers clustered around him like moths to a flame. Tessa was already moving, her hips swaying in that deliberate way that meant she was hunting. I'd seen this dance before, at charity events, gallery openings, anywhere she could network her way up another rung on the social ladder. Within minutes, she was in Luca's orbit, laughing at his jokes with that tinkling laugh she reserved for people who could do something for her. I watched from across the room, nursing my drink and wondering how I'd become such a stranger in my own marriage. My phone buzzed, a text from Riley Morrison, Tessa's best friend and self-appointed PR manager. "Your wife's about to make some serious connections tonight. Try not to embarrass her." Riley had never liked me. From the moment Tessa introduced us, she'd treated me like an inconvenient obstacle to Tessa's inevitable rise to social media stardom. The feeling was mutual. I was contemplating another drink when Luca Drayton himself approached me. Up close, he was even more insufferable, all white teeth and casual arrogance. "You must be Mark," he said, extending a hand that felt like a challenge. "Tessa's told me so much about you." "Has she now?" I shook his hand, noting how he held it just a beat too long, like he was making a point. "She's quite remarkable. Such ambition, such potential." His smile was predatory. "I've been telling her she's wasting her talents." The implication hung in the air between us like smoke. Around us, the party continued its glittering dance, but I felt like we were in a bubble of barely concealed hostility. "Tessa does have a talent for getting what she wants," I said carefully. Luca's laugh was sharp. "Indeed. In fact, we were just discussing her riding with me to my penthouse after this wraps up. I'm having a small gathering. Influential people, you understand. The kind who can really make a difference in someone's career." The words hit me like a physical blow. Not just the invitation itself, but the casual way he delivered it, like my opinion was irrelevant. "I see," I managed, my voice sounding strange to my own ears. "Don't worry," Luca continued, his tone dripping with false sympathy. "Security will make sure you get home safely. Wouldn't want you wandering around downtown alone." Before I could respond, Tessa materialized beside us, her cheeks flushed with excitement and champagne. Mark, Luca was just telling me about his penthouse party. Isn't that amazing? I looked at my wife. Really looked at her. Her eyes were bright with anticipation, but there was something else there, a kind of reckless hunger that I'd never seen before. Amazing, I repeated. So it's settled then, Luca said, placing his hand on the small of Tessa's back with casual ownership. Tessa, shall we? She looked at me for exactly 1 second, long enough for me to see that she'd already made her choice. Fine, she said, and that single word contained the death of whatever was left of our marriage. I watched them walk away, Tessa's hand on Luca's arm, her laugh carrying across the ballroom like breaking glass. Around me, the party continued, but I felt like I was underwater, everything muffled and distant. My phone buzzed again, another text from Riley. Don't be mad, Mark. This is for the brand. You wouldn't understand. Standing there in my rented tuxedo, surrounded by people who saw me as furniture, something shifted inside me. The humiliation crystallized into something harder, colder. They wanted a show? They thought I'd just slink away like a good little husband? I smiled for the first time all evening. They had no idea what they'd just unleashed. I pulled out my phone and scrolled through my contacts, my fingers moving with the precision I'd developed over 15 years in logistics. People thought my job was boring, coordinating shipments, managing supply chains, dealing with regulations. What they didn't understand was that logistics was really about knowing how systems worked, and more importantly, how to make them fail. First call. Danny Reeves, the Grand Meridian's general manager. We'd gone to college together, back when he was just another hospitality major with big dreams. Danny, it's Mark Harrison. Yeah, I'm actually at your hotel right now. Listen, I hate to be that guy, but I think you might want to check the fire safety compliance for tonight's event. Danny's voice was immediately concerned. The Grand Meridian had been fined twice in the past year for safety violations, something I'd discovered during my due diligence for a shipping contract we'd considered with their catering company. What kind of issue, Mark? Well, I noticed they've got those decorative drapes hanging pretty close to the heat lamps at the buffet stations, and I couldn't help but notice the emergency exits. Looks like they might be partially blocked by those sponsor displays. I'm probably wrong, but with all these people, I let the implication hang. Danny knew that a single safety violation during a high-profile event could shut down the hotel's event hosting license for months. Jesus, Mark, thanks for the heads up. I'll get someone on it right away. Second call, Fire Marshal Patricia Wong. I'd worked with her department on warehouse inspections for 3 years. She owed me a favor after I'd helped her identify a major safety violation at a competitor's facility. Patricia, it's Mark Harrison. I'm at the Grand Meridian right now, and I think you might want to send someone over. I'm seeing some potential fire code violations that could be serious with this many people in the building. Third call. The city's noise complaint hotline. Anonymous tip about excessive noise levels and possible permit violations for the outdoor portion of the event. Fourth call. The health department's emergency line. Concerned citizen reporting potential food safety issues at a large gathering. I made each call from different locations in the hotel, moving casually through the crowd like I was just another guest mingling. The beauty of bureaucracy was that once you set it in motion, it became unstoppable. Every department would have to investigate, document, and cover their own liability. 20 minutes later, as Luca was giving his acceptance speech for Athlete of the Year, the first wave hit. Danny appeared at the edge of the ballroom, looking harried, followed by 2 hotel security guards and a man in a fire department uniform. They moved quickly to the buffet area, and within minutes, staff were repositioning the decorative elements I'd mentioned. Luca was mid-sentence, something about dedication and teamwork, when the fire alarm went off. The sound was deafening, a piercing wail that cut through the music and conversation like a knife. The ballroom's emergency lighting kicked in, bathing everything in harsh white strobes that turned the elegant party into something from a nightmare. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a precautionary evacuation, came the announcement over the PA system. Please proceed calmly to the nearest exit. But there was nothing calm about it. The city's elite, dressed in their finest, suddenly found themselves shuffling toward exits in a confused mass. Designer heels caught on carpet edges, champagne glasses shattered on marble floors. The carefully orchestrated glamour dissolved into chaos. I watched from near the bar as Luca's moment of triumph evaporated. He stood on the stage, still holding his award, looking confused and angry as his audience filed out around him. His perfect hair was slightly mussed, his composure cracking. Tessa appeared at his side, her makeup already starting to smudge in the heat and confusion. She was saying something to him, gesturing frantically, but he was looking past her toward the exits, probably calculating how this would play in tomorrow's sports pages. The evacuation took 45 minutes. 45 minutes of the city's most important people standing on the sidewalk in their evening wear, watching fire trucks and emergency vehicles surround the Grand Meridian. The paparazzi, who had been inside covering the event, were now outside taking pictures of disheveled celebrities and frustrated sponsors. I found myself near the hotel's main entrance when Tessa finally emerged. Her perfectly styled hair was flat on one side, her dress wrinkled, and her makeup had run slightly from the stress sweat. She looked around frantically until she spotted me. "Mark, there you are. This is a disaster. Do you know what this means for my content? I had 3 brand partnerships riding on tonight's posts." Behind her, Luca appeared, looking equally frustrated. His designer suit was rumpled, and his famous smile had been replaced by a scowl that made him look petulant and young. "This is unbelievable," he was saying to someone on his phone. "Do you know how much this event cost to sponsor? And now it's going to look like a complete joke in the press." Riley materialized from the crowd, her phone already out, probably trying to spin the disaster for her various clients. "This is actually kind of perfect," she was saying to Tessa. "We can play this as exclusive behind-the-scenes content, showing the real side of these events. Very authentic, very relatable." But Tessa wasn't buying it. Her eyes were wild, her voice getting higher. "Relatable? Riley, I look like I've been through a hurricane, and Luca's party is obviously canceled now. Do you know what kind of networking opportunities I just lost?" She whirled around to face me, and I saw something in her expression that I'd never seen before: genuine panic. For the first time in years, Tessa couldn't control the narrative. "You!" she said, pointing at me like I was somehow responsible. "You're just standing there smiling. Don't you understand what this means?" I looked at my wife, her ruined makeup, her wrinkled dress, her growing hysteria, and I felt something I hadn't experienced in months: pure, undiluted satisfaction. "I understand perfectly," I said calmly. "It means the show's over." The next morning brought a deluge of notifications to my phone. The Grand Meridian evacuation had made the local news, complete with unflattering photos of bedraggled celebrities and a particularly unfortunate shot of Luca Drayton looking confused and angry on the hotel steps. Tessa was already up, pacing around our kitchen in her silk pajamas, her phone pressed to her ear. From what I could gather, she was doing damage control with her various brand partnerships, trying to explain why her promised exclusive gala content consisted mainly of blurry photos of emergency exits and fire trucks. No, I understand your concern," she was saying, her voice strained. "But this could actually be better, more authentic, more real. People love behind-the-scenes content." I poured myself coffee and scrolled through the morning's headlines. Fire safety violations shut down sports awards gala. Emergency evacuation disrupts celebrity event. Athletes and sponsors frustrated by safety scare. My phone rang. Danny Reeves from the hotel. "Mark, I owe you a huge thank you. The fire marshal found 6 different violations that could have been serious problems. If someone had gotten hurt and we hadn't addressed them..." He trailed off. "I've already had 3 different insurance investigators asking about our safety protocols. You probably saved us from a massive lawsuit. Just glad I could help, I said, watching Tessa pace. How's the cleanup going? Could be worse. Most of the sponsors are understanding. They know safety comes first, though some of the, talent isn't taking it as well. I could imagine. People like Luca Drayton weren't used to having their carefully orchestrated moments disrupted by something as mundane as fire safety. After Danny hung up, I opened my laptop and did what I did best: research. If Tessa thought last night was bad, she had no idea what was coming. Social media was already buzzing with posts from the evacuation. Most were sympathetic. People understood that safety came first. But buried in the comments and replies, I found exactly what I was looking for. Riley Morrison had been busy. Too busy. She'd posted a series of Instagram stories throughout the evening, documenting everything from pre-event preparations to the evacuation itself. But she'd made a crucial mistake. In her eagerness to capture content, she'd accidentally recorded several private conversations, including one between Tessa and Luca in the hotel corridor, where my wife was complaining about being stuck with a boring husband who doesn't understand ambition, and Luca was suggesting that ambitious women deserve ambitious men. The audio was muffled, but clear enough. Riley had posted it and then quickly deleted it, but the internet never forgets. I'd learned that lesson in logistics. Always keep backups. I downloaded the video before it could disappear completely. My phone buzzed with a text from my gym buddy Carlos. Dude, did you see the news about that soccer player? Drayton's having some serious sponsor problems. I hadn't seen that yet. A quick search revealed that Luca's main endorsement deal, a multi-million-dollar contract with a family-friendly sports drink company, was under review following some unspecified character concerns. Interesting timing. Another text, this one from my neighbor Janet. Saw Tessa on TV last night. She looked stressed. Everything okay? Janet was the neighborhood gossip, but she was also observant. If she'd noticed Tessa's meltdown, half the suburb probably had too. I was still reading when Tessa finally got off the phone. She slumped into the chair across from me, looking defeated. 3 partnerships canceled, she said without looking up. 3. Riley says it's just temporary, that we can rebuild, but Mark, I was so close to finally breaking through. For a moment, I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. Maybe it's for the best, I said carefully. Those people, that world, it doesn't seem to make you happy. Her head snapped up, and I saw a flash of the old Tessa, the one who'd married me because I was stable and reliable, before she'd decided those qualities were boring. You don't understand. You've never understood. This isn't about happiness, Mark. It's about potential. It's about being somebody. And I'm nobody? She looked at me for a long moment, and I could see her calculating her response. You're safe, she said finally. But safe doesn't get you noticed. Safe doesn't open doors. My phone rang before I could respond. Unknown number. Mr. Harrison, this is Detective Sarah Chen with Metro Police. I was hoping I could ask you a few questions about last night's incident at the Grand Meridian Hotel. My blood went cold, but I kept my voice steady. Of course, Detective. How can I help? We're investigating some property damage that occurred during the evacuation. Someone vandalized a vehicle in the hotel parking garage. A Lamborghini belonging to Luca Drayton. Slashed tires, spray paint, the works. The hotel's security footage shows several people in the garage area during the evacuation, and your name came up as someone who might have seen something. I glanced at Tessa, who was listening intently. I'm afraid I didn't see anything like that, Detective. I was mostly focused on getting out safely during the evacuation. Of course. Would you be available to come in and give a formal statement? Just routine. We're talking to everyone who was in the area. Absolutely. When works for you? We arranged a time for later that afternoon. After I hung up, Tessa was staring at me. Someone vandalized Luca's car? Apparently. That's terrible. He's going to think it was because of the publicity from last night. This is going to make everything worse. I watched my wife worry about another man's problems and felt that cold satisfaction settle deeper into my chest. I'm sure he'll be fine, I said. Men like Luca Drayton always land on their feet. But even as I said it, I was already planning my next move. The police interview was routine, exactly what I'd expected. Detective Chen was thorough but not suspicious. I answered her questions honestly. Yes, I'd been at the gala. Yes, I'd been in the parking garage during the evacuation. No, I hadn't seen anyone damaging vehicles. All technically true. What I didn't mention was my conversation with Miguel Santos, one of the hotel's parking attendants. Miguel and I had worked together briefly when his brother needed help navigating some shipping regulations for his small business. He'd been grateful enough to mention, during our casual chat in the garage, that Luca Drayton was one of those rich guys who parks like he owns the whole lot, and that someone should teach him some manners. I also didn't mention suggesting to Miguel that the security cameras in that section of the garage had been having technical difficulties lately, something I'd learned from Danny during our earlier conversation about the hotel's aging infrastructure. By the time I got home, Tessa was in full crisis mode. She was on the phone with Riley, and I could hear both sides of their increasingly frantic conversation. The Drayton situation is getting worse, Riley was saying through the speaker. 3 more sponsors have pulled out, and there are rumors about some kind of investigation into his personal conduct. This is a complete disaster for anyone associated with him. But what about my content? I have posts scheduled with him tagged, collaboration announcements. Delete everything immediately. We need to distance you from this whole mess. I listened from the kitchen, making myself a sandwich and marveling at how quickly their glittering world was crumbling. That evening, I got an unexpected visitor. Riley Morrison stood on my doorstep, looking less polished than usual. Her normally perfect hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail, and she was wearing jeans and a sweater instead of her usual designer outfits. "We need to talk," she said without preamble. I let her in, curious to see what she wanted. "Tessa's upstairs," I said, but Riley shook her head. "I'm here to talk to you." We sat in my living room, and Riley studied me with calculating eyes. "You did this," she said finally. "I don't know how, but you orchestrated all of it. The evacuation, Drayton's problems, everything." I kept my expression neutral. "That's quite an accusation, Riley. Are you suggesting I have some kind of supernatural power over fire safety regulations?" "Don't play dumb with me, Mark. I've been watching you for 5 years, and I know you're smarter than you pretend to be. This whole innocent logistics manager act, it's bullshit." She leaned forward, her voice dropping to a whisper. "I know about your military background. Tessa might have forgotten that you served in Afghanistan, but I remember. I know you're not just some boring middle manager." I had to give her credit. Riley had done her homework. Most people didn't know about my 6 years in the Army, including 2 deployments where I'd learned some very useful skills about logistics, planning, and psychological operations. "Even if that were true," I said calmly, "what exactly are you suggesting I did?" "You sabotaged the gala to embarrass Tessa and Drayton, and somehow you're behind his sponsor problems too. Riley, I think you're giving me way too much credit. I'm just a guy who coordinates shipping schedules." She stood up abruptly, pacing to the window. "I've worked too hard to let you destroy everything. Tessa's career, my reputation. We've invested years in building this brand." "What brand? A few thousand Instagram followers and some free makeup samples?" She whirled around, her composure finally cracking. "You smug bastard. You think you're so superior, sitting here in your suburban house with your boring job, judging us for having ambition. But you know what? At least we're trying to build something. At least we're not settling for mediocrity." "Is that what you call it? Building something?" I stood up, and for the first time, I let her see exactly what I thought of her and her schemes. "You built a house of cards, Riley. You convinced my wife that she was special, that she deserved more than what we had, that I was holding her back. You fed her ego and her insecurities until she became someone I don't even recognize. Tessa made her own choices. Tessa made choices based on your manipulation. You saw a woman who was unhappy with her ordinary life, and instead of helping her find real fulfillment, you turned her into a performing monkey for social media. Riley's face was flushed with anger now. At least I helped her see that she was wasting her life with someone like you. Do you know what she calls you when you're not around? Her starter husband? The safe choice she made before she knew what she really wanted. The words hit harder than I expected, but I didn't let it show. And what does she really want, Riley? To be another Instagram influencer desperate for validation from strangers? To sleep with athletes for networking opportunities? She wants to matter. She wants to be somebody. She already was somebody. She was my wife. She had a life, friends, a community. But that wasn't enough for you, was it? You needed her to be your project, your success story. Riley was quiet for a moment, breathing hard. You don't understand what it's like, she said finally. Being ordinary, being invisible. Watching other people get opportunities you'll never have just because they were born lucky or beautiful or connected. So you decided to use Tessa to get those opportunities for yourself? Her silence was answer enough. Here's what's going to happen, Riley, I said quietly. You're going to leave my wife alone. You're going to stop filling her head with fantasies about a life she'll never have. And you're going to disappear from our lives. She laughed bitterly. Or what? You'll sabotage my career too? Good luck with that, Mark. I'm not some arrogant athlete with sponsors to lose. I'm nobody, remember? You can't destroy someone who's already invisible. She headed for the door, then turned back. But I can destroy you. I know what you did and I can prove it. One phone call to the right people, and your little revenge fantasy becomes a criminal investigation. After she left, I sat in my living room for a long time, thinking. Riley was right about one thing. She was dangerous because she had nothing left to lose. But she'd made one crucial mistake. She'd threatened me. I spent the next 3 days doing what I did best, gathering intelligence and planning operations. My years in the army had taught me that the best battles are won before they're fought, with preparation and patience. Riley Morrison thought she was invisible, but everyone leaves digital footprints. Her social media management business, Morrison Media Solutions, was a one-woman operation run out of her downtown apartment. She had 12 clients, including Tessa, and her business model was simple. Promise small-time influencers that she could make them famous, take a percentage of their earnings, and string them along with just enough small victories to keep them paying her monthly fees. What she didn't expect was for someone to actually investigate her methods. It took me 2 days to find the pattern. Riley had been systematically manipulating her clients' social media metrics using bot farms and fake engagement services, practices that violated the terms of service of every major platform. Worse, she'd been billing clients for premium promotional services that didn't exist, essentially running a sophisticated fraud operation. But the real revelation came when I dug deeper into her relationship with Luca Drayton. Riley had been feeding information to a gossip blogger named Jennifer Walsh, who ran a scandal sheet called Sports Insider. Every embarrassing story about Luca's personal life, every rumor about his relationships with sponsors, every hint of controversy, it all traced back to Riley. She hadn't been trying to help Tessa network with Luca Drayton. She'd been setting him up for a fall, using my wife as bait. The question was why. I found the answer in a lawsuit filing from 2 years ago. Luca Drayton had been sued by a woman named Amanda Morrison, Riley's younger sister, for intimate assault. The case had been settled out of court with a non-disclosure agreement, but the public records showed that Amanda had received a substantial settlement and had subsequently moved to another state. Riley had been playing a long game, using her clients to get close to Luca, gathering information, and systematically destroying his reputation. Tessa wasn't a potential success story. She was ammunition. Armed with this information, I made a decision that would have surprised the old Mark, the one who avoided confrontation and tried to keep the peace. I was done being invisible. The Riverside Charity Gala was the city's biggest social event of the year, held annually at the convention center. Unlike the Intimate Sports Excellence Awards, this was a massive affair with over 1,000 attendees, live television coverage, and enough security to protect a small country. It was also an event that Riley would never be able to get her clients into through normal channels, which was why I bought a table. Not just any table, a premium sponsor table right in front of the stage, complete with VIP reception access and media credentials. It cost me $15,000, which was most of my savings, but some investments are worth making. I didn't tell Tessa about the table. Instead, I let Riley discover that there was a last-minute cancellation and that she could purchase the seats at a discount through a connection I'd arranged, actually a catering manager who owed me a favor. Riley was suspicious but couldn't resist the opportunity. A table at the Riverside Gala would be perfect for her clients' social media content and networking goals. What she didn't know was that I'd also arranged for Jennifer Walsh from Sports Insider to be seated at a nearby table, along with several other journalists I'd contacted with anonymous tips about interesting stories they might want to investigate. The night of the gala, I arrived early and took my position at the bar, dressed in my best suit and carrying a small recording device that looked like a standard smartphone. I'd learned in the military that the best surveillance equipment is the kind that doesn't look like surveillance equipment. Tessa arrived with Riley and 3 other clients, all dressed in their finest and practically vibrating with excitement. My wife looked beautiful, she always had, but there was something desperate in her smile, a hunger that made her seem almost predatory. They were seated at their table, taking selfies and posting Instagram stories, when the first surprise of the evening arrived. Luca Drayton walked into the reception area. I watched Riley's face go pale as she spotted him. This wasn't part of her plan. Luca was supposed to be in hiding, dealing with his sponsor problems and legal issues. He wasn't supposed to be at public events, especially not ones where she was present. But there he was, looking confident and relaxed, surrounded by a small group of supporters. He'd clearly decided that the best defense was a good offense. Show up, act normal, and dare his accusers to confront him publicly. Riley was trapped. She couldn't leave without explaining to her clients why they were abandoning the networking opportunity of a lifetime. But she couldn't stay without risking exposure. I watched her make the calculation and choose to stay. Big mistake. As the evening progressed, I moved through the crowd like a ghost, listening to conversations and watching interactions. Riley was trying to keep her clients away from Luca, but in a room full of ambitious social climbers, that was like trying to keep moths away from a flame. Tessa, in particular, was drawn to him like a magnet. Despite everything that had happened, despite the risks to her reputation, she couldn't resist the pull of celebrity and potential connections. I was positioned near the silent auction tables when I heard Riley's voice, sharp with panic, coming from behind a decorative screen. "You can't be here," she was saying. "After everything that's happened, showing up here is insane." "Everything that's happened?" Luca's voice was cold. "You mean the systematic campaign to destroy my reputation? The leaked stories, the manufactured scandals, the convenient witnesses who suddenly remember things that never happened? I don't know what you're talking about." "Of course you don't. Just like you don't know how that gossip blogger got access to my private messages. Just like you don't know why every woman I've been photographed with suddenly has stories to tell about my inappropriate behavior." There was a long pause. "Your sister got her settlement, Riley. The case was closed. But that wasn't enough for you, was it? You wanted to destroy me completely." You destroyed her life. I made a mistake. A drunk, stupid mistake at a party 2 years ago, and I paid for it. Legally, financially, and personally. But you couldn't let it go. I moved closer, making sure my phone was recording clearly. Amanda moved on, Luca continued. She took the settlement, got therapy, started a new life. But you've been carrying this grudge, using innocent people like Tessa to get close to me, to gather ammunition for your little revenge campaign. Those people aren't innocent. They're willing participants in a system that protects men like you. Men like me? What exactly am I guilty of, Riley? Being successful? Being visible? Having more opportunities than you? You're guilty of thinking you can take whatever you want without consequences. And you're guilty of thinking you can destroy lives without consequences. But here's the thing about consequences, Riley. They have a way of catching up with you. I heard footsteps and quickly moved away from the screen, but not before I heard Luca's final words. Enjoy the rest of your evening. I think you'll find it educational. 20 minutes later, as the main program was beginning, Jennifer Walsh from Sports Insider approached Riley's table. Ms. Morrison? I'm Jennifer Walsh. I was hoping we could chat about some of the information you've been providing about Luca Drayton. Riley's face went white. I'm sorry, I think you have me confused with someone else. Oh, I don't think so. I have records of our communications, payment receipts, even some of the photos you provided. I was hoping you could help me understand how you obtained some of this information. The conversation was happening at a normal volume, but in the acoustics of the convention center, it might as well have been broadcast. Heads were turning, phones were coming out, and Riley's clients were starting to look confused and concerned. I need to go, Riley said, standing up abruptly. Actually, I don't think you do. The voice came from behind her. Detective Sarah Chen, the same officer who'd interviewed me about Luca's vandalized car, was standing there with 2 other plainclothes officers. Riley Morrison, you're under arrest for wire fraud, identity theft, and criminal harassment. The ballroom erupted. Cameras flashed, people stood up to get a better view, and security moved in to control the crowd. Riley's clients sat frozen at their table, including Tessa, who looked like she was watching her entire world collapse in real time. As the officers led Riley away, she spotted me in the crowd. Our eyes met across the room, and I saw the moment she realized exactly how thoroughly she'd been outmaneuvered. I raised my champagne glass in a small salute. She'd threatened to destroy me. Instead, I'd simply let her destroy herself. The evening wasn't over yet, but the main event had concluded exactly as I'd planned. Riley Morrison, the puppet master who'd manipulated my wife and destroyed my marriage, was finally facing the consequences of her actions, and I was just getting started. The aftermath of Riley's arrest spread through social media like wildfire. Within hours, Riley Morrison's scandal was trending, and every influencer who'd worked with Morrison Media Solutions was scrambling to distance themselves from the controversy. Tessa came home that night in a state of shock. She sat at our kitchen table, still wearing her gala dress, staring at her phone as notification after notification showed her carefully constructed online world crumbling. I don't understand, she kept saying. Riley said she was helping me build my brand. She said she had connections, strategies. She was using you, I said simply. You were never her client, Tessa. You were her weapon. The full scope of Riley's operation came out over the following days. The FBI's investigation revealed that she'd been running multiple fraudulent schemes, using fake social media metrics to inflate her clients' apparent success, then leveraging those inflated numbers to secure brand partnerships that she'd skim money from. More damaging was the revelation about her vendetta against Luca Drayton. The evidence I'd gathered, combined with the FBI's digital forensics, painted a picture of a sophisticated harassment campaign that had cost Luca millions in lost endorsements and legal fees. Ironically, the investigation cleared Luca of most of the rumors that had been circulating about him. Riley's manufactured scandals fell apart under scrutiny, and several sponsors who'd dropped him began quietly reaching out about renewed partnerships. But the most devastating revelation was personal. "Did you know?" Tessa asked me 3 days after Riley's arrest. We were sitting in our living room, surrounded by the debris of her influencer aspirations, ring lights, camera equipment, boxes of products she'd been sent for review. "Know what?" "About Amanda, about why Riley really wanted me to get close to Luca." I had known, of course, but I wanted to hear Tessa say it. "She told me I was special," Tessa continued, her voice hollow. "She said I had potential, that I deserved better than this." She gestured around our modest but comfortable home. "She said I was holding you back?" Tessa nodded, tears starting to flow. "But she was the one holding me back, wasn't she? She was using me to hurt someone else, and I was too blind to see it." We sat in silence for a while. Outside, our neighbor Janet was walking her dog, living her ordinary, uninfluenced life. "I'm sorry," Tessa said finally, "for all of it, for believing her, for embarrassing you, for Luca." "What exactly happened with Luca?" She looked at me with red-rimmed eyes. "Nothing. I mean, I wanted something to happen. I was so caught up in the fantasy of being important, of mattering to someone famous. But when we got to his penthouse that night, after the evacuation, he wasn't interested in me at all." She laughed bitterly. "He spent the whole time on the phone with his lawyers and publicists, dealing with the fallout. I sat on his expensive couch in my ruined dress, feeling like an idiot, until he had his driver take me home." "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because I was ashamed. Because I'd thrown away my marriage for a fantasy that wasn't even real." I looked at my wife, really looked at her. Without the perfect makeup and designer clothes, without the constant performance for social media, she looked younger. More like the woman I'd married. "What do you want now, Tessa? Really want?" She was quiet for a long time. "I want to matter," she said finally. "But I want to matter for something real. Not for how many followers I have or which celebrities I can get photographed with. You've always mattered. To me, to your family, to your real friends. I know that now. But Riley made me feel like that wasn't enough. Like I was wasting my potential if I wasn't constantly trying to become someone else." Over the following weeks, we began the slow process of rebuilding. Tessa deleted most of her social media accounts and started seeing a therapist. She got a job at a local nonprofit, using her marketing skills to help raise money for literacy programs. I watched her rediscover who she was underneath the influencer persona, and slowly I began to remember why I'd fallen in love with her in the first place. But I wasn't the same person either. The experience had changed me, shown me capabilities I'd forgotten I had. I'd spent 5 years being the invisible husband, the boring logistics manager, the safe choice. I wasn't invisible anymore. 6 months later, I got a call from Danny Reeves at the Grand Meridian. "Mark, I have a proposition for you. We're looking for a new director of operations, someone who understands systems, security, logistics, someone who can see problems before they become disasters." The job paid twice what I was making and came with the kind of responsibility I'd been avoiding since I left the military. "What made you think of me?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. "That night at the gala, the way you spotted those safety violations, the way you handled the crisis, that's exactly the kind of thinking we need." I took the job. 3 months after that, Luca Drayton was traded to a team in another city. His reputation had recovered, but he'd learned some hard lessons about the people he surrounded himself with. Before he left, he sent me a handwritten note. "Thank you for exposing the truth. I know it wasn't about helping me, but I'm grateful anyway. Take care of Tessa. She's lucky to have someone who fights for her, even when she doesn't deserve it." Riley Morrison was sentenced to 4 years in federal prison for fraud and harassment. At her sentencing, she finally showed genuine emotion, breaking down as she apologized to her victims. But it was too late for apologies. The night after her sentencing, Tessa and I were having dinner at home. A simple meal, nothing Instagram-worthy, just the two of us talking about our days. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if you hadn't figured out what Riley was doing?" she asked. I considered the question. "I think you would have figured it out eventually. You're smarter than she gave you credit for." "But what if I hadn't? What if I'd kept going down that path?" "Then I would have let you go," I said honestly. "I would have fought for our marriage, but I wouldn't have fought to keep someone who didn't want to be kept." She reached across the table and took my hand. "I'm glad you didn't have to make that choice." "Me too." Later that evening, as we were cleaning up the dishes, Tessa's phone buzzed with a notification. She glanced at it and laughed. "What is it?" "A message from someone asking if I want to be an influencer for their new makeup line. They say I have authentic energy and relatable content." "What are you going to tell them?" She deleted the message without reading the rest. "I'm going to tell them I'm busy living my actual life." Outside, the sun was setting over our ordinary suburban street. Our neighbors were coming home from work, walking their dogs, living their uninfluenced lives. It was exactly where I wanted to be. For 5 years, I'd been the invisible husband, the boring logistics manager, the safe choice. I'd let other people define who I was and what I was worth. But when it mattered, when my marriage and my dignity were on the line, I'd remembered who I really was. I was someone who planned carefully, who saw the big picture, who understood that the best victories are won not through force, but through patience and intelligence. I was someone who protected what mattered to him, and I was someone you definitely didn't want to underestimate. Riley Morrison had learned that lesson the hard way. The lights had gone out on her schemes, her manipulations, and her revenge fantasies, and I'd been the one to flip the switch.